Today I want to talk about crochet trends that I think are wrapping up and fading out as we leave 2024, and new styles and techniques I think that are going to come into trend in 2025. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel where we talk all things crochet, creativity, and how to romanticize your life with handmade. I'm Bonnie, and today I want to talk to you about crochet trends. First trend I see heading out, and what I think is going to come in and replace it, is Tunisian crochet. Tunisian crochet has had a great run the last few years. It is a great technique that gives you a knit-like appearance without having to learn to knit, which is why I think it was such a popular thing. And I don't think that the Tunisian crochet trend is fading out because it's no good or it's not any fun. I think it's a great technique to learn, but there's been a lot of interest in a technique I've seen lately that I think is going to take over in 2025, and that is mosaic crochet. Mosaic crochet is absolutely having a moment, and I think it's only going to grow in 2025. If this is a technique you haven't seen or heard of yet, mosaic crochet is a way of using single and double crochet stitches to create intricate geometric designs. Why is it trending? Well, first of all, it's stunning. It's perfect for blankets, pillow covers, bags, but I think one of the reasons why this is becoming such a popular thing is because you don't actually need any new tools or techniques to be able to make these masterpieces. It's also one of those techniques that can kind of fit into any type of aesthetic. You can go bold and colorful with high contrast type things, or you can have colors that are more similar, more subtle, more neutral, and the patterns that you can create with this technique are limitless. Anything from simple repeating geometric shapes to full-fledged scenes of things like winter wonderlands. What do you think? Do you think you're going to try out mosaic crochet in the new year? Do I think Tunisian crochet is done forever? Of course not. All of the trends I mentioned in this video are just my personal opinion, and just because something's popular or not popular doesn't have to affect whether you like it or want to do it in any way, shape, or form. So please, I just wanted to throw that in there. These are just my opinions. These are just things I'm seeing happening in the community. You do not have to follow any of this advice, and you can completely disagree with me. In fact, I'd love to hear if you do down in the comments. Here is my second trend I think that is going to fade out from 2024, and we are going to enter something new in 2025. And you probably have seen this coming. I think that the 70s aesthetic that's been really popular is stepping out, and we are going to shift into naturally the 90s. The color palettes and the vibes of the 70s have been popular for a while now. There's been lots of orange and brown. There's been lots of granny square projects. The pieces are fun and they're nostalgic, and I think they also shift very easily into the 90s. The 90s, a resurgence of the 70s. The 90s, there is a lot of similarities in the styles. I think one of the biggest differences are the colors. While the 70s is muted tones like burnt orange and olive green, the 90s is all high contrast, bright neon colors. I think we're going to replace those granny squares with things like non-traditional squares in similar kind of projects. And I think we're going to see things like bandanas and stripes give way to bucket hats and checkered prints. And I also think that this kind of makes sense with the shift into that mosaic crochet that I was talking about earlier, because it's going to work so perfectly with like those high contrasting colors like blacks and neons together. So what do you think? Are you excited for this shift into the 90s, or were you really hoping 70s would stick around a little bit longer? Let's talk about a shift that's hitting the crochet world specifically. I think that growing your yarn stash is officially out, and that stash busting is going to be in 2020. I know it's hard to resist buying all of the yarn, and I don't think that buying yarn is going anywhere at all, but I think that the hyper consumption of the last few years is now making people realize I need to do something with all this yarn. Realizing that your yarn collection is huge. Hands up if you've ever bought a skein just because it was pretty. Just for it to sit in your collection, totally forgotten. There was a big wave of new crocheters over the last few years. And I think that that big wave of new crocheters informed the market a little bit that we needed lots of yarn. And unfortunately, one of the things that's informing this opinion for me is I've seen a lot of indie dyers shut down. And as much as that sucks, it does inform me that people just aren't buying yarn like they were before. And that I think there's going to be a big focus coming forward of people trying to work through the stash that they have, trying to get creative with the yarn that they have in their collection, so as to be more sustainable, to be more conscious about the way they're spending their money, etc., etc. There's so many reasons, honestly. I also think that there is a little bit of element to stash busting where it's become something that's a challenge. It's fun to do, a way to almost make a game out of your crochet and to see if you can get through your projects, if you can get creative with the projects you're choosing to use up the yarn you have. A lot of your favorite designers probably have scrappy patterns that you can find. A lot of YouTubers and designers do stash busting challenges, especially as the new year rolls around. And there's even other kinds of events, like my friend Sarah of SEK Handmade does a whip wrap up in January. It starts on the 1st, and that is just a challenge to get through your whips and finish those up and use up the yarn for those projects. So at the end of the day, stash busting isn't just practical, it's inspiring. It challenges us to work with what we have, to save money, and to be very considerate about the projects we're choosing, because we have to work within what we have. I would love to hear what your favorite stash busting project is. Let me know down in the comments. And are you ready to go through your stash, or are you going to continue to build up your collection? So those were kind of my top 3 things that I thought were going to be fading out and what was going to be replacing them. But there is one trend that has been growing in 2024, and I think is going to continue to grow in 2025, and that is oversized everything. And this isn't a trend only in the crochet world. It is a trend that's happening in the fashion industry as well, with runways doing lots of oversized garments. You might have noticed that there are a lot of big, giant amigurumi going around. I watch a lot of market vlogs on YouTube, and I've got to tell you, finding crocheters who aren't selling big, chunky plushies is actually almost impossible. This is such a popular thing to make right now. People love the amigurumi, and then they're making it with this big chunky yarn. Another thing that's informed me on this trend is I live in a more rural area. It's a smaller town. There's a Joann's in the next town over, about 30 minutes from me, and that Joann's has only ever had about an aisle and a half of yarn, and it's almost all been worsted yarn. I barely shop there because I prefer smaller size yarns, but I went in there recently and was ecstatic to see for about 2 seconds that there was an extra aisle of yarn. But guess what that entire aisle was? That's right, it was all big chunky yarns. So the fact that the Joann's in my little tiny town has decided to extend their yarn aisles to incorporate these chunky yarns means it's selling good for Joann's. So it's a trend that's definitely growing. But for crocheters, this is something that's happening not only in what is being made, but in what we're making with. There's a ton of opportunity to bring your own unique designs and perspectives to this trend. Right now, it's almost exclusively amigurumi that's using these kind of yarns, but the yarn is so popular and so many people are out there trying it that there is a big open market for things that you could make with this. And one of the ones I've seen that I'm actually pretty excited about is people making big chunky bags with this, like big tote bag with. So there is a huge opportunity here, especially as a designer, to create some patterns for people who have this kind of yarn in their stash and might be starting to get bored of the amigurumi or just are looking for ways to use it. Last thing I'm going to touch on for trends in 2025 is like tools that I see becoming much more popular in the year ahead. We all know about hooks. We all know about stitch markers. Those are very common. There's pretty common mediums for those things, like charms, polymer clay, and the laser etched style stuff. And for things like hooks and yarn bowls, it's usually like wooden or those are polymer clay, or the acrylic style stuff is very popular. But one of the techniques I see coming in to take the crochet tool world by storm is 3D printing. Not only is 3D printing great for things like yarn bowls and stitch markers, but I am seeing people get really innovative with things like keeping your yarn when you're doing color work in order and stuff like that. And I think that the nature of 3D printing, because you can make it come up with little parts that you can put together in new ways, you're not so confined to kind of the forms that are already out there, means that there are going to be some really cool things come out that are going to help us crocheters enjoy and have an easier time with our crafts. So what do you think? Think I got any of these right? Think I'm way off? Think there's one I missed that I should know about? I'd love to hear about all of it. Go ahead and drop me some comments and let's chat about the trends that are coming for 2025. I would also love to know if you have a crochet related New Year's resolution. My New Year's resolution, I have so many patterns. I don't have as much yarn. I've never been a big giant yarn stash type of person, type of crafter. I don't have the kind of disposable income you need for that kind of thing. And I also don't have the space to store that kind of yarn. I have so many I've bought because I just love the pattern, love the designer, wanted to support them. Maybe it was on sale. I'm a sucker for pattern sales. I don't know what's wrong with me, but the second I'm like, oh, it's $1 less than normal, I'm grabbing it. So I would really like to work through my patterns this coming year. And so my goal for 2025 is to make at least one design that's not mine each month. I showed you tons of pictures of crocheting here, and anything that had a pattern I've linked in the description below. I've linked all of the tools I showed you too if you want to check any of those out. Thanks for hanging out with me, and thanks for listening to me ramble about all the crochet things. I can't wait to see how many of these I got wrong and how many of them I got right. And I can't wait to see all the creativity I know is going to come from our in the new year.